about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now, and I want to thank you for joining with us. I appreciate your attendance this morning. Well, I see a ton of you folks out there all the way from Haymarket, looks like Haymarket, Virginia, San Diego, California, Rockwall, Texas, Town and Country. I'm not quite sure where Town and Country is. I see Mission Viejo out there. There's a ton of you folks out all over the country. Glad to have you on board. If you have an opportunity to, join our friends over at Patriot FB. They'll become your new friends. PatriotFB.com. That's like Patriot, like Facebook. And constitutionclub.ning.com. Those are two websites that carry our program, and we appreciate their efforts and work towards trying to keep our republic in some semblance of restoredness or restitution. The idea of what happened over the course of the weekend, first of all, there's a couple of things that have happened over the weekend, not the least of which is that the Obama and Hagel did a swap of Taliban for a prisoner of war who's been held by the Taliban for the past 5 years. We're going to talk about it because, first and foremost, the question is, did Obama and Hagel commit misprision of treason? And the reason that we need to understand that is because they had an obligation to notify Congress 30 days in advance before doing such a thing, and they didn't. Now they're claiming that they went to the DOJ to get legal approval, but with this Department of Justice, you can't quantify or qualify anything based on what they say because they are completely, totally, and abjectly outside the law in virtually every aspect of what they rule upon. Following their legal rulings, there are no laws, unless it applies to you. To you, there's plenty of law. To the cronies and the pals and the friends and the corporatocracy out there is no law. So, first and foremost, did these two commit misprision of treason, which I believe they did? And then the second topic is the Taliban got the better end of this deal. We didn't release 5, by the way. We released 5 in this instance, but we released 5 more a couple of months ago in an effort to sweeten the pot to open negotiations. That was our ante, just to talk to the Taliban, our sworn enemy. So now there are 10 Gitmo detainees running around who have been released. The argument, of course, is this really just another way for Gitmo to get emptied so that Barack Obama can hold up a sign that says, "See, I did what I promised. Your taxpayer dollars at work" type of sign. And the second issue is, I don't care what you think about the war. I don't care whether you think we should have been in Iraq or Afghanistan. The problem with this guy, Bergdahl, is that he abandoned his mates. And according to his fellow soldiers, he was a deserter himself. And he sought to help the Taliban in some kind of a misguided unicorn fantasy he had that, he could go out there and change the world single-handedly like he was on some kind of a church mission trip. He sent an email to his parents just days before he abandoned and left his countrymen. And 6 good men died trying to find him. That's a problem. Our third topic, the EPA's new war on American families, jobs, and your finances. Folks, they're going to knock or ratchet up, I guess is a better term. They're going to ratchet up the issues surrounding carbon emissions from coal plants. The goal is to, according to Barack Obama, necessarily get your electric bill to skyrocket, which serves two purposes. It keeps you struggling financially, keeps you off balance, confused, and it's scared. And, of course, the game plan is that when we're the most vulnerable, we'll be attacked by our own government in one shape, way, form, or another. Will it be physical? Not initially, but it will happen. And that's the truth. Anybody else who tells you something else is a liar. They don't know. And I can tell you that all the signs point to it. I can't give you emphatic proof. I can't show you some plan that says, this is the code name for the operation. But you don't need that. You don't need that because you see all the signs all around you. They're everywhere. And those who don't acknowledge them, who refuse to see them, who refuse to pay attention to them, well, they're playing right into their hands. No one at this point who's intellectually honest, no one at this point who is willing to face truth and accept it for what it is would deny such a thing. Our fourth topic will be the faces of NSA and their new facial recognition databases and how they are and why they are working so diligently to collect facial recognition on Americans. See, the offer that I've made so long ago still stands. It's never been collected. Send me one benefit that you personally will get out of a national database containing all the information on you, and I will send you a crisp, brand new $100 Federal Reserve debt note. Your data includes all of your purchases, your health records, your emails, your phone metadata, speech-to-text records of all your phone calls, your taxes, everything about your job, your mental health, your travels, your interests, your circle of friends, the associates you know, your family, who connects you with you, in what shape and way and form, all the financial facts about you, and much more. Find me one good thing that will come from this data in government hands that will actually become a benefit to you, and you'll win $100 for losing. What did I just say? You'll win $100 for losing, because you are the loser here, no matter how it goes. And the $100 will barely touch the impact and the cost to you. It won't even begin to make a dent in it. It'd be like shooting a rifle at a 10-inch thick plate of steel. It'll barely make even a scuff mark. You can call us if you'd like. We've got a telephone number that you can dial in if you want to participate in the show and give us your feedback or input. You can call 573-453-5505. It's a new phone system. We've been working to try to test it out, and you're welcome to utilize it. Again, it's 453-5505. 573-453-5505. You can call anytime you want. Just give a shout in here, and we'll try to bring you on the air. If you'd like to hear our program at your leisure, you can do so on our listen line, which is radio over phone. You can call 415-325-0725. That's 415-325-0725. And there you can listen to the program at your leisure anytime you want. So let's tap into our first discussion this morning, because Hagel came out yesterday and he made a confession. And he made a confession on national news. And why he isn't now in handcuffs and awaiting arraignment, I'm not sure. He came out and he said on Sunday that he's aware of the law that requires the executive branch to consult with Congress 30 days, at least a minimum of 30 days, before agreeing to any prisoner swap. Here's what he said. It's his own words. This is a quote. As to notification of Congress, yes, there is a 30-day notification. I notified the appropriate committee leadership, different committee leadership, yesterday. That's part of the responsibility I have as the Secretary of Defense. Meaning that he noted and reported to them on Saturday. Hagel said the situation was urgent. Quote, this was essentially, in our opinion, to save the life of Sergeant Bergdahl. As I said before, we had information that his health could be deteriorating rapidly. There was a question about his safety. We found an opportunity. We took that opportunity. I'll stand by that decision. I signed off on the decision. The president made the ultimate decision. We did spend some time looking at this. Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard the confession of a man who is guilty of misprision of treason. In criminal law, this is a term that is used to cover a number of different aspects or a number of different terms. But the real goal of it is that U.S. Code states that whoever owing allegiance to the United States and having knowledge of the commission of any treason against them conceals and does not, as soon as may be, disclose and make known the same to the president or to some judge of the United States or to the governor or to some judge or justice of a particular state is guilty of misprision of treason and shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 7 years or both. Now, it is normally used when a crime has been committed and someone does not report that crime as a crime before it occurs. In other words, you know that someone is about to commit a crime and they're going to go rob a bank. You know they have the plan. You know who they are. You know what date and time it's going to occur, but you refuse to pick up the telephone and make a call and let the authorities know that that person or group is about to commit a felony. It's called a misprision of felony. And it is a felony in and of itself. Although it's classified as a misdemeanor, it can become a jailable offense, obviously. In criminal law, it's used to signify what they classify as a considerable misdemeanor. So it's somewhere between a misdemeanor and a felony. And it is generally used to denote whether or not someone has committed a contempt against their own sovereign nation or their own government, when we're talking about misprision of treason now, and or the courts. But it's a form of seditiousness and disloyalty and disloyal conduct to the nation. Maladministration of high public office is one of the terms, and including, by the way, the misuse and malfeasance related to public funds, which means that basically everybody in Congress is guilty. To neglect or to make light account of a crime, failure in the duty of a citizen, to endeavor to prevent the commission of a crime, having knowledge of its commission in advance, and revealing it to the proper authorities. It is negligence, malfeasance, breach of duty, omission. Now, I ask you to go back and listen again to Mr. Hagel's statement. As to notification of Congress, yes, there is a 30-day notification. So he admits that, yes, there is a notification that's required. 2, I notified the appropriate committee leadership, different committee leadership, yesterday. That means Saturday, because he made the statement on Sunday, which means that he didn't give them 30 days notification because the swap had already occurred. Bergdahl had already been released, and the Taliban people from Gitmo had already been cut loose. He goes on to say, that's part of the responsibility I have as the Secretary of Defense. In other words, he's admitting that it's his responsibility to notify Congress. He's also admitting, of course, that he's been malfeasant in that responsibility, and he has betrayed his fiduciary responsibility to the state and to you. Then he goes on to say, and here's where it gets interesting. This is where the full confession comes and closes the circle. And it's where he also implicates his boss. This was essentially, here's where it gets interesting, in our opinion, to save the life of Sergeant Bergdahl. Now, recognize that the court does not agree or allow an individual to have an opinion that says, well, in my opinion, it was more appropriate for me to to rob the bank than it was to allow my children to starve. You're still going to go to jail, I promise you. Try that defense and see what happens. Secondarily, your opinion, and if you were to go to a judge and say, but Your Honor, I spoke to the police department, and they said it was not illegal to carry a gun. Therefore, I walked into the bank with a gun and I took the money. See if that keeps you out of jail. You see, you cannot state that you sought, and quite honestly, if you walked into a courtroom and you said to the judge, but I went to the chief of police and I asked him, is it illegal to rob a bank? And he said, no, it's not. You can rob a bank. If you tried to use that as your excuse, you would find yourself in prison. Even if the police department was wrong, as they would be. You see, just because someone gives you a legal opinion who's in the legal industry does not make it appropriate for you to violate the law. You can't say, well, I asked my attorney if it was legal to rob a bank, and he said, no, so I robbed the bank. Now you can't hold me guilty and you can't hold me responsible for robbing that bank because I asked my attorney. What they're saying is, we sought the opinion of the Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice gave us the go-ahead to avoid the 30-day notification to Congress. Department of Justice doesn't have the right to circumvent the law based on their opinion, their desires, their agenda. The law is the law. They are not the makers nor the arbiters of that. There are judiciaries, and there is a judicial aspect to this nation. Frankly, they would have a better argument by saying, we got an opinion from one of the Supreme Court judges. And even that I wouldn't buy. But at least it would have more credibility than telling me that Eric Holder gave you his opinion. As to notification of Congress, yes, there is a 30-day notification. I notified the appropriate committee leadership yesterday. That means you violated the law. That's part of the responsibility I have as a Secretary of Defense. Therefore, you just gave us and waived your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, Mr. Hagel. Secondarily, he goes on to say, this was essentially, in our opinion, based upon the opinion we got from the DOJ, to save the life of Sergeant Bergdahl. There's no authority in the law that says, based on an exigent circumstance, you can circumvent the law. As I said before, he goes on to say, we had information that his health could be deteriorating rapidly. Well, it doesn't really make any difference. There's a woman who's been held in the Sudan, who I understand was promised to be released, and is now they've changed their mind. Whose two American children, American-born children, are sitting in a prison with her, and she's kept chained to a bed. We're at one of which she just had the other day, and she had to have the child born while chained to the floor. That child's health is deteriorating. In fact, in that particular prison, which is built to hold 100 people, now it's 1,200, and at least one baby per day dies. Why aren't they getting her out? I mean, we had how many Americans held in Iran for 444 days? Many of them, their health was deteriorating. We have an American in an Iranian jail right now whose health is deteriorating. We have an American in a Mexican jail whose health is deteriorating. Why aren't they doing something about that? He goes on to say, as I said before, we had information that his health could be deteriorating rapidly. There was a question about his safety. We found an opportunity. We took that opportunity. I'll stand by that decision. Remember what he just said. I'll stand by that decision. I signed off on the decision. The president made the ultimate decision. We did spend time looking at this. Well, a gang of thugs and thieves spends a lot of time plotting and planning to smuggle drugs into the country. They spend a lot of time planning a robbery of a bank or an armored car. But it doesn't make it legal. He said he would not sign off on the release of any Guantanamo detainee, quote, unless our country can be assured that we can sufficiently mitigate any risk to America's security. You have no way of knowing that. You've cut 10 people loose. 10. And we're going to talk about that in the next segment. 10, not 5, as the press is telling you. We're going to show you how they cut 10 loose. 5 just to put the ante up to be in the poker game. And then 5 more as the bet to get Bergdahl back. Bergdahl reportedly abandoned and deserted his post. And that's from his own countrymen. That's by the Army's own admission. Hagel said Bergdahl had been held for 5 years, and when asked about his reportedly deserting his post, he said, and that's 5 years of very difficult living. But he was able, by the way, to walk to the extraction helicopter, right? When asked about the prisoner exchanges and if that was a new round of negotiations and paving the way for more negotiations, Hagel said, well, it might, and we hope it will present an opening. He was then asked about, National Security Advisor Susan Rice was asked on a Sunday show on CNN State of the Union if Congress... And she did say that Congress wasn't notified about the prisoner swap as the law requires because of concerns about Bergdahl's health. She said, after almost 5 years in captivity, our concern was increasing with every passing day, but we also had indications that indeed his health was growing more fragile. He had lost a good bit of weight, and we were very concerned that time was not something we could play with, that we needed to act when we had the opportunity, and that's what we did. She said Congress has been briefed, but only the day before. Or actually, the day before her statement, they were briefed days after the decision was made, and the act was done. When Congress has been briefed, when we had past potential to have this kind of arrangement, so it wasn't unknown to Congress, which basically by that statement tells me that they didn't even brief them on this particular issue. They briefed them on the general concept. She said that the decision to act unilaterally was made by the Defense Department in consultation with the Justice Department. Quote, and this is Susan Rice now. Of course, everything Susan Rice says we should believe, right? She was the one who told us that Benghazi was about video. And given the acute urgency of the health condition of Sergeant Bergdahl, and given the president's constitutional responsibilities, it was determined that it was necessary and appropriate not to adhere to the 30-day notification requirement. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm telling you is that your government, your president, your Secretary of Defense, and Susan Rice have admitted and confessed on live television to a misprision of treason and an act of treason against their own nation. And that is the truth. You're listening to America's Voice now. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Taliban and how they got the better end of this deal. Because they got 10 traitors back, 10 of our traitors, 10 traitors to the United States, 10 enemies for one of our traitors. I don't get it. We'll be back in just a minute. You're listening to America's Voice now. So, here's the question. Why did we trade 10 terrorists for one traitor? 10, you say? What are you talking about, 10? There were 5 Taliban leaders, all released from Guantanamo Bay. Gitmo, And it wasn't 10, you say. Well, you're wrong. It was 10. And I'm going to tell you where and how. And what we got back in exchange was a traitor who's ashamed to be an American, by his own statement. Back in August of 2013, a mere, 9 months ago, we released 5 Guantanamo detainees as a goodwill gesture in order to get the Taliban to enter into negotiations with us so that we would be able to cut this deal. Obama released, quietly I might add, 5 Taliban inmates from Guantanamo to open the peace talks in Afghanistan. Now, that was on a bunch of news organizations back in July 29th of 2013 and in the first days of August. There was no official announcement. There was no publicity. They kept it quiet. They didn't talk about it. They didn't have a White House lawn press corps release. But they released 5 members of the Taliban from Gitmo to open the peace talks. Quote, a top U.S. official said the prisoners were released under the condition that they will not engage in any violent activity. That was from Ynet News and Breitbart. The activity of those people that had been released was obviously not an open discussion for question because they were being held. But it was done as a move to open the door for the United States to discuss with the Taliban future releases, including for Bergdahl, and the idea that we could come up with some sort of a peace talk with the Taliban in Afghanistan in anticipation of pulling out of there. So they got 5 people back in August or July, and then 5 more for Bergdahl. Now, the real question in here is why we swapped 10 known terrorists, and I don't care what kind of assurances they're going to give us that these people won't go back to acting against the United States or against our American soldiers who are over there. And frankly, I don't care whether you believe in Afghanistan and you think we should be or shouldn't be there. I don't care whether you believe we should or shouldn't be in Iraq. That's immaterial. And here's why. We have soldiers and men and women over there. And they're dying and being wounded and being maimed while they're there. And whether or not you agree with the political reasons for what we're doing over there or anything else makes no difference. The real question here is whether or not Obama is using Bergdahl and the withdrawal of Afghanistan to empty Gitmo and utilize that as an excuse to do what he can't figure out how else to do. Or whether or not he's actually complicit in their efforts to destroy Western society and institute a global caliphate. We know he's been extraordinarily sympathetic to Muslims. We know that he's been extraordinarily sympathetic to extremist Muslims. Now, I don't care where you stand on the issue of Islam and all the rest of that. I'm only talking about a group of people, and there's 1.5 billion Muslims on the planet, okay? If only 1% agree with the concept of Muslim extremism, Think about the number, folks. Think about that number. 1.5 billion Muslims total. That means that there are, 15 million Muslims who agree with the extremist viewpoint. 15 million. That's a sizable army, folks. We know that this administration has been open, accepting, gracious, beneficent, bending over backwards to try to help them. We don't know why. We know that they've been smuggling weapons to Al-Qaeda and extremist Muslim organizations in Syria. We know that's what Benghazi was really about. So the question really is Obama not just guilty of misprision of treason, but is he guilty of betraying his own nation in favor of his Muslim beliefs? Or is he simply an absolute idiot? I believe that you can call Obama a lot of things, but stupid I don't think he is. What we do have is an organization that has acted for all intents and purposes as if they are diametrically opposed to their own nation. Susan Rice, who has about as much credibility as Charles Manson, and an equal amount of blood on her hands, I might add. She tried to couch this as, we don't leave our men behind. But that wasn't the attitude and the way she dealt with the issue of Benghazi. She says he wasn't a hostage. He wasn't simply a hostage. He was an American prisoner of war captured on the battlefield. So why didn't you think that when 4 men were killed in Benghazi and many, many more were wounded? I got to tell you, none of this to me makes any sense. Congress, and of course they're making political hay out of this, so don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. This does not absolve them of their responsibility for their own misprision of treason regarding every aspect of their own functional jobs. But they're coming out and screaming bloody murder. Why weren't we notified? See, every time we set ourselves up like this, I don't care what excuse you can give me, whether this guy was captured on the battlefield or not. We have a phrase which says we don't negotiate. We don't negotiate with hostage takers. We don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't negotiate. And we've had prisoners of war in every war that we've ever had. And I get it that, prisoner swaps are a long-standing tradition. But did we get the fair end of the deal? Or did the Obama administration just get a chance to push its agenda along a little bit further? Their agenda, of course, being the absolute, total, and utter destruction of the United States, at least the core and the fabric of the country as we know it and expect it to go on. They want a fundamental change of the way that the country works. They want fundamental changes of our political beliefs, of our social beliefs, of our religious beliefs. They want fundamental change of the way that the country operates fiscally. They want a fundamental change of the nature of freedom and liberty. They want fundamental change into a caste system where there are only two castes: the elitists, the globalists, the friends of the administration, the corporatocracy, and everybody else. You don't have to look far to see how that's been accomplished or what their goals are. You don't have to look far at all. It's there. All the proof you need is right out there. They've been doing it now for 5 years. And don't misunderstand. Bush did the best he could to accomplish the same agenda for the 8 years he was in office, as did Clinton for the 8 years he was in office, as did Bush Sr., as did even Reagan. I don't understand what America is waiting for. We're going to reelect in November 90% of the incumbents in Congress. 90%. I hear you say you're unhappy. I hear you say you're disgusted. I hear you say that what's happening in our country is wrong. I hear you say that we're being betrayed. But I don't see you doing anything about it. What I do see is Americans who are willing to let bygones be bygones just mere seconds after they've been sold out. I see a nation that is completely, abjectly apathetic and complacent. And they're not even interested in mediocrity. They don't have a problem with being the lowest rung of the ladder. It's like not a death wish, a wish to be a third world country, to be led around by a ring through your nose like a bull. The Ministry of Propaganda enjoys extraordinary credibility. How and why anyone would give this government and this administration and this Ministry of Propaganda arm of it's just I mean, according to his own fellow soldiers, this guy was a traitor, or at least a deserter. He sent an email to his parents just days before he left. One of his fellow soldiers, a guy by the name of Gildersleeve, said this: "You want it from the horse's mouth? Here you go. We were at OP West, Paktika Province, Afghanistan. It was a small outpost where B Company 1, 501st INF, Airborne Infantry, ran operations out of, just an infantry platoon and ANA counterparts there. The place was an Afghan graveyard. ANA is the Afghan National Army. The place was an Afghan graveyard. Bergdahl had been acting a little strange, telling people he wanted to, quote, walk the earth, end quote, and kept a little journal talking about how he was meant for better things. No one thought anything about it. He was a little, quote, out there. Next morning, he's gone. We search everywhere and can't find him. He left his weapon, his kit, and other sensitive items. He only took some water, a compass, and a knife. We find some Afghan kids shortly after who saw an American walking north, asking about where the Taliban are. We get hits on our voice interceptor that Taliban has him, and we were close. We come to realize that the kid deserted his post, snuck out of camp, and sought out the Taliban to join them. We were in a defensive position at OP Mest, where our focus is to keep people out. We knew where the blind spots were to slip out, and that's what he did. It was supposed to be a 4-day mission, but turned into several months of active searching. Everyone was spun up to find this guy. News outlets all over the country were putting out false information. It was hard to see, especially when we knew the truth about what happened. And we lost good men trying to find him. PFC Matthew Michael Martinek. Staff Sergeant Kurt Robert Curtis. Staff Sergeant Clayton Bowen. PFC Morris Walker. SSG Michael Murphy. Second Lieutenant Darren Andrews. They were all KIA from our unit who died looking for Bergdahl. Many others from various units were wounded or killed while actively looking for Bergdahl. Fighting increased. IEDs and enemy ambushes increased. The Taliban knew that we were looking for him in high numbers, and our movements were predictable. Because of Bergdahl, more men were out in danger, and more attacks on friendly camps and positions were conducted while we were out looking for him. His actions impacted the region more than anyone wants to admit. There is also no way to know what he told the Taliban. Our movements, our locations, tactics, weak points on vehicles, and other things for the enemy to exploit are just a few possibilities. The government knows full well that he deserted. It looks bad and is a good propaganda piece for the Taliban. They refuse to acknowledge it. Hell, they even promoted him to sergeant, which makes me sick. I feel for his family, who only want their son or brother back. They don't know the truth, or they refuse to acknowledge it as well. What he did affected his family and his whole town back home, who don't know the truth. Either way, what matters is that good men died because of him. He has been lying on all those Taliban videos about everything since his capture. If he ever returns, he should be tried under the UCMJ for being a deserter and judged for what he did. Bergdahl is not a hero. He's not a soldier or an infantryman. He failed his brothers. Now sons and daughters are growing up without their fathers who died for him, and he will have to face that truth someday. Folks, that's from the mouth of one of his countrymen, loyal countrymen. Did we get the better end of this deal? 10 terrorists for one traitor? I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't have gotten him back, even if it's only to try him. I am suggesting that we shouldn't have swapped 10 known, dangerous, high-level terrorists who I guarantee you we will see in news reports and in short order that they are back to operations. Now, the 5 that were transferred most recently for the direct swap for Bergdahl, they were sent to Qatar. Qatar has assured us they can't leave the country for a year and that they'll keep them out of mischief. If you want to call warring against our country mischief. But the truth of the matter is that they can do an enormous amount of damage, and you can bet that they will be surrounded by sympathetic people who will be telling us one thing while allowing them to do something completely different. Why? Because in the world of Islam and the Muslim world, deception to non-Muslims is a way of life. It's expected, it's anticipated, it's desirable as a trait. We know that we don't have any friends over there. They're with us to get our money. Their alliance to us and allegiance to us is only directly related to their own benefit. As soon as that benefit ceases to exist, we're abandoned. And they walk away washing their hands of it, saying, well, the Quran says we have the right to lie and cheat and steal because they're infidels. And in fact, it encourages that activity. So will Qatar protect us from those 5 Taliban? Hell no! They most certainly will not. I don't care what kind of assurances they gave Secretary of Defense Hagel. And if one American boy or one American girl dies as a result of these 10, not 5, but 10 traitors being released, then Hagel and Obama and Rice and the entire Pentagon executive organization that was involved in this should be charged with murder. Murder. Because the action that came about as a result of their misprision of treason resulted not only in the betrayal of their nation, but in the deaths of those citizens who will come to die as a result of these people being released. You've been listening to America's Voice now. We're going to take a quick break. Before we do, I would like to make sure that you are aware of the American Resume Service, one of our sponsors, who has graciously agreed to support this program by making a $100 donation for every person that takes them up on their offer. Their offer is essentially this. They have a $200 resume program out there to either create or refresh the existing resume you have. They're going to do that for 50% off only for America's Voice Now listeners. So it's going to cost $100 to you. That $100 in total is going to be sent over to America's Voice to support and keep this show on the air. I think that's a very gracious thing for them to do. And you, on the other hand, can, 1, write it off your taxes because it's an expensive finding a job. 2, you'll get yourself a very, very well-written resume and some great counsel on what you can do in this tough job market to find a job. You can call them, you can visit their website, and you can email them. Their website is AmericanResumeService.com. You can call them at 417-264-2486, or you can email them at info@AmericanResumeService.com. Make sure that you see our friends over at Battery Station, one of the longest-term sponsors we've had. They have flashlights from Surefire. They have flashlights and batteries. They make their own 123 lithium-ion batteries. These are the same ones that if you buy them in Walmart or one of the stores out there, they cost you $2 and $3 and $4 a piece. The Battery Station has their own private branded one that's made here in the United States. Made in the United States. And it lasts far longer than the competitors out there. I use it myself. Made right here in the United States by one of the top battery makers in the nation, private branded for them, and they sell it to you for far less than you would pay to get one of the brand name versions. BatteryStation.com, 417-257-7799. BatteryStation.com, 417-257-7799. See our friends over at Pizza Hut around the nation, but especially here on Porter Wagoner Boulevard in West Plains. Tuesdays and Thursdays, reduced lunch price, and on Tuesday evening, kids under 12 eat free. We'll be right back.
about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I am the host here. I want to bring you up to speed on what's going on with the war on America. Sponsored in, they're kicking it off today. It's a war on energy, and it's a war on you by your own government, your own administration, the Barack insane Obama administration, and he's utilizing the EPA as a weapon of mass destruction against American citizens. The goal is to jack the electricity rates, drain you of resources, keep you off balance and confused. It's the equivalent of shock and awe on American citizens. And I, for one, am sick and tired of being betrayed. Our electricity bills have gone up 40% in just the last couple of years alone. Wait until you see what this does. This is the administration's equivalent of we're going to quit a job without hope of another job. We don't have a resume put together. We've not inquired about another job. It's a terrible job market, but we're going to quit this one because we don't like it. Who does that? You don't do that when you've got 315 million people relying upon you for food and a roof and heat and water. But that's essentially what they've done. Find anyone in the job-seeking industry. Find a headhunter. Find anybody who works in employment and finding jobs and say to them, I really don't like this job I have. And, it's a job that a lot of the public doesn't like. And I'm just curious, should I quit it first and then go find another job, or should I find one first and then quit this one? And I guarantee you that 100 out of 100 will tell you the same thing. Never quit one job until you've got another one. But that's not what we're doing. We're going to quit this job, and we don't have anything to replace coal with. The percentage of American energy that comes from coal is like 36%. I apologize. That's natural gas. I believe coal is actually 60%. What we get from the alternative energy solutions is between 5 and 7%. And that's what I'm talking about there is solar and water and wind. We can't build nuclear plants because the Department of Energy and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and frankly, we probably shouldn't. They're dangerous. We don't really have a way to control that. As we saw with Fukushima, one hair out of place can cause a major disaster that will affect people for literally thousands of years. Until we have that right, and I'm not sure we can ever have it right, but, we have coal. We don't have another solution. We can't build natural gas plants fast enough. If the government said, look, this coal is a problem, and we're going to provide for the fact that we've got to wean us off of coal, and they are to a certain extent. In all fairness, this doesn't take effect fully until 2030, right? So it's a 15-year plan. But they're instituting it now, and the gas when electricity prices have already climbed 40 and 50, and in some cases 100%. We heard what Barack Obama promised us. Under my plan, electricity prices will necessarily skyrocket. He told us that. He said, if you want to build a coal plant under my administration, you can, but it's going to bankrupt you. What kind of a president says that? Whose side is he on? The Pentagon is in on the game. They're doing everything they can. And look, anybody in the Pentagon who disagrees with Obama and his climate change agenda for the military, which one has nothing to do with the other, or his boot-stomping destruction of America, they've been ousted already. They've already been purged. Now all they've got is the loyal ass kissers. Pentagon's going to change the way they fight war over climate change. What kind of insane nonsense is that? You got more. Look, they just had a volcano the other day in Philippines somewhere, or I've forgotten where it was now. Anyway, here's my point. Indonesia. That volcano has spewed more carbon into the atmosphere than the entire world has produced in the last 5 years. But that won't stop them. Because their real goal is the destruction of our nation. Their real goal is to bring us to a third world country where we become the equivalent of India's caste system. There are elitists at the top, oligarchs, corporatocracies, aristocrats, and then there's everybody else. And if you're listening to this program, you ain't in the aristocracy. That much is for damn sure. The Hill calls it a climate change war with Republicans. It's not a climate change war with Republicans. It's a war on America. It's a war on you. It's a war on your children. It's a war on your parents. And also that he can leave a legacy. A legacy of what? Treason? A legacy of being the first president to openly, blatantly break the law time and time and time again? A legacy of manipulating Congress and administrative agencies to act as weapons of mass destruction against the country that he allegedly leads. But all Republicans are worried about is, I wonder if we can use this to win back the Senate. The whole flipping lot of them needs to be in handcuffs. We need a perp walk that's about 3,000 people long, chained together like the traitorous animals they are. Even the Chamber of Commerce, and I don't believe anything the Chamber of Commerce has to say because they are, at least with regard to immigration, because they're pumping for immigration. At the behest, of course, of the multinationals and the transnational corporations that own them. But even the Chamber of Commerce argues the rules will cost the U.S. economy $50 billion a year. $50 billion. Folks, where are they going to get that money? I tell you where they're going to get it, out of you. To make matters worse, the number of jobs that will be lost is in the 220 to 250,000 range. Now, 1 in 6 men between 24 and 54 are not working. 1 in 6. It's the highest number of unemployment we've had since the Great Depression. But these people don't care. You see, and the reason they don't care is because they are achieving their goal. Their goal is the utter destruction of the United States of America. I cannot say it often enough. I cannot say it clearly enough. I cannot say it loud enough. Their goal is the utter destruction of this nation. They choose to tear it down and raise the phoenix of tyranny from the ashes of liberty and freedom. That's their goal. Any other way you look at it is self-delusion. And they'll do anything and everything to achieve that goal. They don't care about anything else. They just don't care. I don't know where it is for Americans to go from here, because to me, there's no point anymore in trying to raise awareness. If you're not awake now, then you're lost to us anyway. Think about it from the perspective of a minister. You can go out there and you can stand on the street corner on the prostitution alley. And you can sit there and you can, educate and teach. And you might save one once in a great while, but for the most part, they want to live in squalor and just, apathy and drug addiction. And it's the same with Americans. We can sit here and we can talk to them all we want. We try to raise awareness. I can't get videos to get out there on YouTube because YouTube shuts them down. They shut off, they lock them down. I can't post stuff on Patriot FB because my internet provider won't allow me to post anything on Patriot FB. If I do it at the studio here, it gets up there. If I do it from my home office, it doesn't. How's that? Why is that? That's only one thing, folks, the internet provider. And frankly, I'm tired of the fight. I'm tired of working ceaselessly, relentlessly, tirelessly to awaken Americans who don't even want to be saved. They want to wallow in their misery. They gladly lick the boots of their master. And I don't understand it. I can't make headway. I just cannot make headway. I mean, I look at the numbers of people who listen to and allow themselves to be fooled by Fox News. Who is, for all intents and purposes, nothing more than controlled opposition is the only phrase I can use for them. They're controlled opposition. They're meant to give you the illusion, just like voting, of choice. But you're voting for Republican and Democrat. And they've got that entire stage locked down so that there's no other entrance allowed. It's an illusion. Two parties are just doing the same thing, wearing different clothing while they're doing it. They approach it from different angles, but the end goal is the same. The media is, I don't think ever in the United States of America the media has been this compliant in the betrayal of their own nation and themselves, frankly, because it's suicidal. I'm a pretty blunt guy. I've had many of our listeners say, I can't believe that you don't have a national program. Listen, I'm on one radio station, one. And they play it at midnight because they're normally a music format. I'm locked out of the local radio station. They don't want anything to do with this program. You know why? Well, I can't speak for their mindset, but I can tell you that when we have been on radio, we more than paid our own way with advertising. And the listenership was huge because average people want to hear. But those who are controlling things don't. I've been doing this for 3 years, and I have watched things slide at an accelerated rate that is not terrifying. It's beyond terror. Every day I see another step taken towards treason, the destruction, the utter loss of everything that this country stands for. And it's broken my heart for years, which is why I've done this program for as long as I have, in spite of the opposition to it. I can't get traction. I can't get viewers to see it. I can't get listeners to hear it. A couple thousand people a day? You kidding me? I think any minister who said, I've got a congregation that small, would probably go home and say, you know what? I'm just going to pray in my own living room because I can't do anything. I used to consider this a mission. But a mission for what? Mission to accomplish what? We're losing. We're losing the fight. We're losing the war. We lose battle after 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 battle. We've got 5 minutes left in this segment, and if I said after battle for the next 5, I wouldn't be inaccurate. The EPA is, the IRS is, the NSA is an enemy of massive, stunning, and staggering proportion. They have resources beyond anything you can conceive of. Power to destroy. And that's the only power they have. Government is only force. And we've allowed that fire to get out of our control. If you'd like your input on this, you can. 573-453-5505. But I'm going to suggest to you that this phone won't ring, and I'll tell you why. Because all the efforts to educate and inform you, to motivate you, to activate Americans, to stand up, to do the right thing, to wake up, recognize the danger you're in, to awaken you to the reality of what the EPA and these agencies are doing to our country and to you and to your family. I think they're for naught. And I think America is going to slide into a complete and total and utter collapse. And then they will attempt to try to scrabble their way back to a position of strength. And a lot of blood is going to get spilt. And a lot of people are going to get hurt and maimed and die. Every fortune you think you have will be lost. And your nation will have betrayed you. And you will have betrayed your nation. Not you specifically. Well, maybe. I don't know. What would our founders have done by now? What would they have done by now? They wouldn't be sitting there afraid to speak out of their pulpits. They wouldn't be afraid to get out there and call it like it is because they were afraid of a politically correct response from somebody or something. They didn't shirk from their duty. They spoke loudly and clearly. They wouldn't have let themselves get separated and divided over black and white and Hispanic and abortion and non-abortion and life and pro-life and anti-life. They wouldn't have allowed themselves to get split up and separated over things like animal rights and, all this nonsense. It's all diversionary tactic and division. Keep them separated because, God forbid, if the caste, and I say caste, C-A-S-T-E, ever gets together, and they ever have a moment to plan, our goose is cooked. That's what Congress is sitting there saying to themselves. That's what the Pentagon says. They know it. But we'd rather fight about whether or not you're gay and or not gay, or how you owe allegiance and genuflection to somebody who is. I don't really care who you sleep with. Why does it matter? And why do you care that I care or don't care? That's the real question. Why do you care that I don't care? America, we're done. And that's the simple truth. And unless you're willing to stand up and do something, there's just nothing. There's nothing to keep this thing moving. All right, we'll take your call in a second, Susan. We're going to have a break coming up in 24 seconds. When we come back, we're going to talk about the faces of the NSA's new facial recognition databases being built. They're using the internet, social media, your driver's license. I don't care what they tell you. They're lying their tails off to you. And they're building databases to subjugate and enslave you, America. Just keep playing along. I sound unhappy this morning, and I am. I don't know what we're waiting for, America. Maybe Susan has some answers for us. We'll bring her on. I don't get it. I don't know what the country's sitting here waiting for. It's like Susan's one person who I will admit has taken the bull by the horns and changed some things for her area. Of Quite astoundingly, I might add. Good morning, Susan. Are you with us?
I can't hear you.
Are you
on
with
my phone? I can hear you on the radio.
Okay. Well, you can't hear me on your phone?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yes, we can. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead.
Go ahead.
My city is only about 2,000. But I bug the city hall, the police, the school, and I try to share with them everything that I know. And you're right, they don't listen, but I'm not going to stop.
Well, I don't disagree with you, and I've been doing it for years, and I'm grateful and appreciative of the fact that you have done this for as long as you have. And I understand you were not a person who was an activist a couple of years ago. And I applaud and I'm encouraged daily by your example. I just don't see enough Americans doing it. Are you still with us?
There may be more doing it and not telling you to.
Well, perhaps so. But, I mean, I'm what I see around us is a nation that is collapsing on itself and is not even willing to... it's not even willing to attempt to save itself.
Well, I'm on it today. Have a good day.
Thank you. You know, I admire Susan very, very much. I'm just going to tell you her story, and I'll leave it at that. But Susan is a girl that started listening to our program a couple of years back. I was going to talk this morning about the faces of the NSA's facial recognition database, but she was a person who was working, or listening to our program, and she began working within her own community to go to the school board, to go to and monitor and let the city council and the police department and the school boards and local politicians know that she was watching them and that she was paying attention. She goes to school board meetings, and some nights she's the only person there. Most nights. She fought Common Core. We've been fighting Common Core as parents. And I'm encouraged when I see a person like Susan step up. But when I see the rest of America, who's more interested in, chasing after the latest iPod or whatever it is that catches their interest, or afraid to stand up and speak because they're afraid that they're going to be ostracized at work, or... Let me tell you something, America. This radio program has... The cost of this has kept me from financial benefit. It's kept me from obtaining work and jobs. It's cost me 3 years of my life in a federal penitentiary. Cost me then 3 years of being monitored by some person who made me pee in a cup over a gun deal that they manufactured. Why would you make me pee in a cup if this wasn't if it was a charge over failure to pay a tax on a gun? It's all a game. And I don't see enough Americans willing to stand up and do what's right. I just don't. I mean, everybody's got to be able to survive and make a living. I get it. But when I see what is happening in our country and the unwillingness of those who are required and their acquiescence to it. I mean, that's what this thing about the NSA's facial recognition database was about. I mean, people know. And they post up their pictures to Facebook. I mean, what's the matter with you? Why would you give the enemy ammunition? But be afraid to speak out. You're giving them ammunition to hurt you. And then you say, Well, I don't want to be on a list. You're already on a list. You're on a list because you weren't born into the right family. And you don't work in Washington. And you're not connected or tied to a lobbyist somewhere. And even if you work for a transnational, you ain't in the board. And you're not one of the mega investors. So you're not part of the aristocracy. And you're not part of the political oligarchy. So who and what are you? I'll tell you what you are. You're a victim. And I don't care what color you are. I don't care whether you came across a border legally or illegally. I don't care whether you were born of American parents. I don't care whether your parents were born into slavery. I don't care whether you think you were born into slavery now. You have been born into slavery. And when given the chance to leave the plantation, you refuse to allow the key to be placed into the handcuffs to release them and free you. It's as if you would sit there and say, no, keep that key away from my cuffs. I don't want my cuffs taken off. And your benefactor says, well, why not? By taking off those cuffs, you can leave. I know, but I got clothes here, and I get 3 meals a day. Yeah, but the clothes you're wearing smell. And they're torn. And your children are taken from you. Are you that afraid of the unknown that you're willing to live like that? Apparently, you are. And this is, I guess, to a certain extent, a direct indictment of everybody that hears this program. If you are not actively fighting this, and I mean fighting it on a day in and day out basis with every fiber of your being, irrespective of the cost, the divisions are out there that keep you separate. I saw an email from somebody who posted it up on our Facebook page, Mark, Walter Whiteman. And he's very heavy into the idea of, the Barack Obama is not a qualified candidate. And he opens this email by saying, short of fully automatic weapons and explosives, I want law-abiding citizens to be just as well armed as a criminal may be in committing a crime. I also believe guns are a deterrent to a tyrannical government. He says, he opens with, I believe in the Second Amendment, short of fully automatic weapons and explosives. I'm sorry. You're wrong. Dead, absolutely, 1,000% wrong. You can sit there and rail about a Barack Obama having a Social Security number that's out of Connecticut when he never lived in the state, and he's got a fake this and a fake that. I don't disagree with any of that. But when you tell me that you believe in the Second Amendment, short of fully automatic weapons and explosives, that's the end of the discussion right there, because we can't go any further. Why? Are you dangerous with explosives or fully automatic weapons? Would you be? Would you? I mean, if somebody dropped a pound of C4 off on your front door and said, here, this is for you, would the community have to worry about you? I mean, would you be out trying to figure out how to shape a charge to get into the local bank that night? Is that real? Is that a real concern? If you had a fully automatic weapon, would you use it less responsibly than you would use a semi-automatic weapon? I'm asking you. Yes or no? But you separate yourself. You draw your own dividing line. You split your own defensive line. For what? To what end? Well, I can't agree with anybody who doesn't believe in anti-abortion. Great. So you're a pro-lifer who's so pro-life that you're going to abandon the principles of the nation that is pro-life. Go ahead, caller. Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show. Can you hear me? Caller, can you hear us? Caller, can you hear us? Apparently not. I guess they couldn't hear us. I don't know. Caller, can you hear us? All right, I don't know what's up with that phone line. America, at what point are you going to step up to the plate and say, we've had enough? I know most people say, well, what am I supposed to do? Tell you what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to say, I'm done. And you're supposed to get every person that you know, and every person that you work with, and every person that you are friends with, and every person in your circle of influence, and say, we collectively are going on strike. And I don't care if we have to help each other out with some food. I don't care what we've got to do. I don't care if I've got to allow you and your family to come stay with me and my family. Because you're going to be doing that soon enough anyway. The only difference is you're going to be doing it while people are chasing you around in soldiers' uniforms, either our own or the United Nations or whomever. And they're going to be chasing you around looking for you. But whatever it is that you're thinking, whatever it is that you're thinking, America, you've got to take a serious look at this and decide what you're going to do. You're afraid you're going to lose your home, your car, your job. You're going to lose all those things you have accumulated. Do you realize that you're going to lose them all anyway? You think you're going to be able to take the boat with you and you have to leave the community that you live in because riots are happening in the street because the dollar is, got no value left? But the IRS is knocking on your door and you got the EPA who's jacked your electricity up so much that you can't afford to pay the mortgage. Because your electric bill is the equivalent of your mortgage. I get it. You got to have some resources to be able to do that. But if you got a big screen TV in your house, then maybe you need to reanalyze your priorities, huh? If you're driving a brand new vehicle and you've got a $300 or $900 or $600 a month vehicle payment for a truck, maybe you need to prioritize. I'm seeing the tipping point has been way over, reached a long time ago. And I don't see America doing anything about it. I'm sorry, by the way, caller. I can't apparently bring you on, so I'm not quite sure what the issue is, but I apologize that I cannot seem to bring you on the air. See, the real problem here, America, is that for whatever reason, you are unwilling to do what's necessary. I can't tell you what that is. You already know. You already know. You already know. I'm asking you to tell me what you're going to gain from what's going on right now in your country. I mean, I posted an article this morning how Planned Parenthood is sending letters out, and they're using the Bible to justify abortion. They're issuing a pastoral letter. I kid you not. From Planned Parenthood, it says, Clergy Advocacy Board. Pastoral letter to patients. The decision to have an abortion is personal. Though your reasons may be complicated and private, you're not alone. As religious leaders from a number of religious traditions, we're here to support you in your decision. Are you trying to tell me? Are you trying to tell me that you're listening to, that you're stating you're trying to use clergy to promote abortion? In America, you're willing to put up with that kind of... I mean, I don't care what your religious beliefs are. That's anathema to the principle of self-preservation. You can't have... Jesus. You can't have two masters. You can't have two masters. You got a government that's building databases on you. I talked to you about this many times. I've asked you over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. What is it precisely that you think they're going to do with all this information on you? How's it going to benefit you? Ask yourself that question. Why can you not say, I opt out of all of it? You can't admit at this point, or you can't possibly believe, I guess is a better phrase, that we are far from the goalpost. But you see, once the goal is achieved, to say, okay, let's tighten up our defense now, it's too late. Let's start really playing. They just scored another goal. I mean, how does that make sense? How does that make sense? I don't know what you're hoping to achieve with that kind of mentality. Can you hear us, caller? Try one more time.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, can you hear us, caller?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, go ahead. You're on the air.
Hi, Mike. I've been listening to you this morning, and it's come down to one realization that people are not willing to give up their fortunes and their property, their materialistic things.
They're not willing to pledge their life, their fortune, and their sacred honor? Is that what you mean?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, you got now where if you served your country, you're deemed a terrorist. You stand up for who you are. You're what? You're deemed a terrorist.
Yeah. I mean...
So what does it come down to? When is the breaking and tipping point for the people to stand up and say something where, if anyone actually sits down and reads, they'll find out this little clause in a little article that says that government becomes corrupt or unjust, people shall take arms and reclaim their government. At what point do we say enough is enough?
I suspect it won't be until after the goalpost has been breached, when the touchdown's been made, and then the team is going to say, you know what, let's rally our defense now. Well, the game is over, and the game has been lost because you allowed the touchdown to continue to happen. You can't rally the team after the game is over and the final score's been called.
Exactly.
How do you do that? How does that make sense?
Disgusting. It doesn't. It's disgusting at this point. Why? Because everyone wants to go out and buy that next cool TV that has the internet capability so they can sit and watch Netflix.
Well, actually, so that they can sit and watch Netflix while the NSA sits and watches them. I mean, talk about suicide, right? You're more interested in making sure you're chasing the latest NSA tracking device that is out there on the marketplace, which they're using to capture everything about you. I mean, it's absurd to me. I can't understand it.
What it's come down to is that it's very ridiculous is that everyone worries about what's going on, but a simple thing is a loss of job. How is that? Is anyone truly prepared that when they start shutting down all these plants, what they're going to do?
No, and we're going to lose 250,000 jobs probably in the next year or two over this EPA thing. Well, and that's only one of many.
Exactly. And everybody gets so concerned with what's going on, not within their own home and what's going on with their neighbors. They're so concerned about what somebody wore. I seen an article come up of some woman wearing a T-shirt for a skirt. A wife beater. It was disgusting for a skirt.
Yeah.
You see pictures like that on the internet, and you're like, well, what is this? But that's the newest and greatest thing. But, hey, the new season of that goofy little kid that, her mom exploited her.
Hey, I'm sorry, we're on a hard break, and we're going to get cut off. I apologize. I couldn't have given you a fair warning. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Hey, folks, we are going to wrap for the day. I don't mean to blow you guys off with this stuff, but I got to tell you, I mean, how much longer can we allow this to go on? You've been listening to America's Voice Now. You can communicate with me directly at mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. You can find our website at americasvoicenow.org directly, and we'll see you tomorrow. God bless.